The Dallas Mavericks, an organization that saw a generational talent in Luka fall straight into their laps, and he's quickly made a name for himself as arguably the future face of the NBA. However, over the years, it's been no secret that he's had a severe lack of help, and despite the efforts of Mark Cuban and the front office, they seem to be going backwards. I want to keep this intro short and get straight into the video. How's it going, folks? My name's Andy, and without further ado, here are all the problems with the Dallas Mavericks. Post-Kyrie trade. I might as well talk about the elephant in the room. Before the Kyrie Irving trade, the Mavs had a record of 29-26. Not phenomenal, but still competing for the 4 or 5 seed in the West. Since that trade, their record has fallen, and now they're struggling to climb back into the playoff race. Obviously, injuries have played a role too. The thing is, Kyrie isn't even playing poorly. He's actually been fantastic on an individual level. You might think guys like Dorian Finney-Smith and Spencer Dinwiddie were simple role players, but they were critical to the team's success in the previous season. The Mavs were already incredibly weak at the wings, so losing Doe was a huge deal. He was the longest tenured Mavs player and developed alongside the rest of the roster. Even though his shooting dropped off, he hustles, he's constantly moving and hounds the opponents on defense. He brought a level of intangibles that cannot be replaced, especially not by Reggie Bullock, who became a full-time starter after DFS got traded. He has the shooting, but nothing else. Spencer was also playing very well. He's not on Kyrie's level, obviously, but he was having a career season too. Not just that, but if you take a look at the Mavs roster changes compared to a year before, they essentially lost Jalen Brunson, Dinwiddie, and DFS for Kyrie, who might not even re-sign with the Mavs, cause he's about to be an unrestricted free agent over the summer. They did have a chance to keep Brunson if they negotiated and offered him a contract sooner, but the Mavs front office was hesitant in investing in Brunson, especially after his poor performance in the 2021 playoffs against the Clippers. In hindsight, it was poor judgment, cause you shouldn't judge a player based on one series. Plus, Brunson came into the NBA with Luka. They've gotten accustomed to playing together, and Brunson is a better off-ball player than Kyrie. Now Mavs fans are watching from a distance as Brunson ascends into stardom. Nowadays, the Mavs offense is still superb, but it's basically just Kyrie and Luka taking turns going one-on-one, or calling for pick and rolls. I mean, it's been working, I guess, but they don't elevate each other. It's similar to what we saw in OKC with Westbrook and Durant back in the day. Even if Kyrie does stay, I'm hesitant to say they could contend with this duo. Defense. The Mavs' defense has been a point of contention. I mentioned earlier about the team's roster changes, but I left out Christian Wood because I wanted to talk about him here. The issue is, Wood is a horrific defender. Everyone knew that when he was in Houston, and everyone knew that when he came to the Mavs. However, the Mavs last year sported a defensive rating of 109.4, good for 6th in the NBA. While Wood is a bad defender, he can't hurt the Mavs that much, right? Surely they'd still be a top 10 defensive team. Well, they're not. This season, the Mavs' defensive rating has dropped to 116.4. That's 23rd in the league. So far this season, in the 1,647 minutes Christian Wood played, the Mavs' defensive rating is an atrociously bad 118.4. Despite his solid counting stats, Wood is a net negative whenever he's on the floor. Of course, it's not just him either. The loss of DFS, like I mentioned earlier, hurt them on the wings, defensively. Luka is at fault here too. With the Mavs' struggles, he's been spending an even more exorbitant amount of time arguing with the refs, to the point where he's not getting back on defense, or he's super slow to get back. The Mavs, as a team, are also near the bottom of the NBA in many intangible numbers too. For example, they're second to last in deflections per game, they're second to last in contested three-point shots, and 7th to last in overall contested shots, 6th to last in percentage of loose balls recovered. All of this indicates just a total lack of effort, a lack of hustle, a lack of energy and desperation. They're not moving fast enough or getting to their spots on time to contest shots. This brings us to a lack of identity. In the previous season, the Mavs reached the Western Conference Finals. That team had the identity of being a young, gritty team that didn't have a lot of talent outside of Luka. but they played with a ton of effort and wore opponents down with their methodical defense. It was their defense that carried them deep into the playoffs. They were also dead last in the NBA in pace, but there's nothing wrong with that. This was their identity. Their biggest issue last season was finding Luka some help on offense, which they did try to rectify by getting Christian Wood, and later on, Kyrie Irving. However, they went too far in the other direction. While now they're a far better offensive team this year, they no longer have that identity as a rugged, defensive-minded team. They're more of a glass cannon team now, basically all offense. Even bad teams are straight up having a field day with the Mavs defense. Random guys on other teams are just going off against the Mavs. I don't even think this is a coaching issue, which, I'm not a fan of Jason Kidd. But I feel like these defensive woes, it's more of a personnel issue. Cause last season, Kidd was still the coach and they had a phenomenal defense. This time, with the new guys they have, they simply don't share the same mindset of what got them here in the first place. Jason Kidd has said some polarizing stuff in the past, but sometimes I do agree with what he says. There's been so many times this year he ripped the Mavs' effort on defense, and at one point even said, quote, "If it's with this personnel, then you've got to keep asking or demanding for those guys to play defense." Another thing to note is that last season, they were quite good at running their smaller lineups, with Dwight Powell as their lone big man. It allowed the floor to be more spread, to have more space, more guys on the wings who drive and kick, and it lets Luka have more options on the perimeter. If they can't go back to their old identity, maybe they should try to change it up a little bit and start playing faster. But due to Luka being, more of a slower player, maybe that won't work either. Lineup changes. By far the biggest problem with the Mavs is their starting front court. They have one of the worst front courts in the NBA, certainly the worst among all playoff contenders. They've been experimenting with Maxi Kleber, running two bigs, or sometimes going small and throwing Josh Green into the mix. Either way, their front court, man, they've had this gaping hole in their roster ever since Luka got drafted, and it's a miracle they even made the Western Conference Finals. The coaching staff seems to be throwing stuff at the wall at this point and seeing if it sticks, but nothing has stuck. They could try putting Christian Wood back into the starting lineup. Remember earlier in the season, when they put Wood into the starting lineup and they went on a 7-game win streak, and he was going off? Yeah, his defense is abysmal, but the team's defense is already so bad regardless. Overall, the Mavs have dealt with injuries that forced them to experiment with different lineups. Luka, Kyrie, Tim Hardaway Jr. have all been in and out of games due to various injuries or load management. Approaching playoff time, the Mavs' lack of chemistry is concerning. They haven't had the time to gel and mesh together after the trade deadline. However, the fact that they now have two legitimate superstars who are both playing at their very best, they're gonna be a threat in the playoffs regardless, if they make it there. Contract situation. Now, let's get down to the facts. I've mentioned this in numerous videos before, but Davis Bertans currently has the worst contract in the league, and it's not even close. He's getting paid $16 to $17 million per year until 2025 to warm the bench. This will be a huge cripple for the team's ability to sign other guys as Luka approaches his prime, unless they can find a way to get rid of his contract. Tim Hardaway is also getting paid way too much for what he provides. Same with Maxi Kleber, making $11 million per year until 2026. If you combine the salaries of these three guys plus Luka's salary, that comes out to over $85 million per year. The projected salary cap for 2024 is $134 million. They basically only have enough space to sign one more max player. And if they do, the rest of the team will be on minimum deals. So what max player can they actually sign? Well, there's one standing right here. Kyrie Irving is going to be a free agent and he's looking for the max. If the Mavs miss the playoffs or severely underperform in the playoffs, there's no way Cuban will re-sign Kyrie and move forward with this roster, will he? Heck, it might be better to just re-sign Christian Wood instead, who's also going to be a free agent, and then use the leftover cap space for some cheaper role players to complement Luka. But will they really just let Kyrie walk like that, after giving up so much and losing Jalen Brunson the previous summer? This is a tough decision for Cuban and the Mavs front office, cause there really is no right choice. It's possible that Kyrie resigns and him and Luka have a magical run to the championship in the next few seasons. That could happen. But it's also likely that when Kyrie gets paid, he will go back to his usual antics. And the Mavs will have wasted away Luka's best years with a disaster of a roster. To add onto all this, in terms of young talents, they really don't have much outside of Luka. Josh Green is promising, and he's had moments where he looks legit, but it's too early to tell. Oh, and I guess they also have Frank Ntilikina, who I feel like he's been in the NBA forever, but he's still somehow only 24 years old. It's probably because watching him on the Knicks made me lose a couple years of my life. We'll see what happens in the next few years. The Mavs have a lot of questions they've yet to answer. Anyway, that's all folks. Let me know your thoughts about the Mavs' current situation, and do you see them missing the playoffs? And do you think they'll re-sign Kyrie if they do miss the playoffs? Thank you all so much for watching. I hope y'all enjoyed the video, and of course, as always, I'll see you next time. Peace.